Hello, my friends. Lori Ashcraft here. I'm your host for Viva La Evolution, which is sponsored by Recovery and Resilience Solutions, which is a training and consulting branch of Crestwood Behavioral Health. And if this is your first time joining us, let me just give you a little background on our podcast and our purpose. Our purpose is to listen to a whole lot of different people. A lot of people who've had experiences with mental health issues or substance issues. People who have done research on this, people who have studied it, people who've treated it, all different kinds of people. To listen to everybody and to figure out what's really working and to keep doing it, and to figure out what's not working and to stop doing it. Together, we can make a difference. We can make a big difference, but we can't do it alone. We need to do it together, and we can't do it by dividing ourselves over theories or processes or politics or anything. It's going to take all of us working together to make the kind of changes necessary in our mental health system. We all know things could get a lot better. We just need to make them happen. So that's the purpose of our podcast. And thank you for joining us. Hope you like it. Today, we have a fascinating interview with a man who goes by the name of Vaughn, V-O-N. And I first heard about Vaughn from some of my friends at Crestwood. And then Vaughn somehow heard about our podcasts, and he said, I'd like to be on a podcast. So today we're talking with Vaughn. Vaughn's story, you'll hear. Let's see. The issues that came up for him came up right after, I would say, during and after high school. This is such an incredibly vulnerable period for all of us to navigate that space between adolescence and adulthood. It's a place where addictions are so, we're so subject to addictions, so vulnerable to addictions at that point, because it's that open space, that undefined space. Unless we come out with a solid plan and a lot of support to carry it out, it's tough. It's tough to be in that space. So Vaughn tells us about that space in a very authentic way. So we really get the issues there. And then he tells us about all the things he went through to come out where he is now. So there's just so many gems in this story. I'm just delighted to be sharing it with you. And Vaughn talks a lot about his spiritual experience. And I would say I would call his spiritual experiences more or less accidental spiritual experience. He didn't go about to make them happen. They happened to him. And what it brings up for me is some of the early work of Stanislav Grof. If you don't know anything about Stanislav Grof, I encourage you to look him up on Wikipedia or wherever and just learn about him. He was the first psychiatrist to really study in a research way psychedelics. And it happened because a drug company, a well-known drug company, I don't remember which one it was, sent him some LSD in the mail to experiment with. This was in probably the early 60s, maybe 50s. And so he had a lot of experience with people on psychedelic journeys and learned a lot from that process. Then he went on to, he was in Europe at the time. He moved to America, went on to have an amazing career in America. He was at Johns Hopkins for a while, a lot of prestigious research places he turned up. He ended up to be a key player in the Esalen Institute, and I would say a founding father of the transpersonal psychology movement. And in fact, I think at the end of his life, he still worked at the transpersonal school in the Bay Area. Anyway, that's a little bit about him. But the reason I'm bringing him up is because early on, as a psychiatrist, he began to see people coming into crisis programs talking about spiritual kinds of things. And they would get diagnosed, not respected as a spiritual experience, but diagnosed as a mental illness. So Stanislav Grof began to look at them differently. And in fact, he's written a whole book here. This book was written, I think, in the 60s. Really some high value contributors, but the name of the book is Spiritual Emergency. And he went on to do a lot of work with people in a crisis state due to a spiritual issue. And he treated it as though it were a spiritual issue, not a mental health issue, with some amazing results. A couple other books I just happened to have that he wrote. He wrote this one. This was written by his first wife, Christina Grof. The Thirst for Wholeness. That's a really good one. This is one of my favorites. I co-wrote this, The Stormy Search for the Self. This is details a lot of Christina's issues with addiction and how that was really part of a spiritual process too. Anyway, I just encourage you as we listen to Vaughn's story to not listen to it through the lens of a mental illness, to listen to it through the lens of a spiritual emergency, a spiritual emergence. He has a lot to teach us, a lot. So without any further chatter from me, you can tell I'm a little excited about this. Let's hear from Vaughn. Okay, well, here we are with Vaughn and a couple other people. Vaughn, who are these folks you have with you?
This is Miley, the recreational director. She's someone that helps me get all these things situated, like having the interview or doing the speech, the gratitude speech that I did on the storytelling. She got that all set up. She's a really awesome person for me. And she really helps me out. And then this is Brian. He's my new service coordinator. He was a team lead on the floor for some time. How long? 2 years. 2 years.
Oh, yeah.
And he was always there for us when we needed him. Really awesome, outstanding guy.
Well, you've got a great team then.
I got a great team, yeah.
Yeah, you got.
And that's just only some of them. I would love to introduce all the staff members that help me out.
Well, maybe we'll do this again and you can bring in your whole team next time.
I'll bring in my squad.
Okay. Okay, well, Miley and Brian, thank you for sitting in for a minute so you could be introduced as Vaughn's team. Appreciate everything you do to help him and other people. So thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
We'll be here. Oh, you'll be here? Cool.
So Vaughn, I'm just delighted that you were interested in being interviewed today. Partly because you've got pieces of your story that we haven't told very much about. And it's such a critical part. And that's the part that happens to people when they go through a transition. And in your case, it was a transition from like high school to adulthood. And navigating that space is such a challenge for people, for all people. And so you navigated that. You fell in a few potholes here and there, but you're coming out the other side. So I'm really glad we could share your story with our viewers.
Yeah. It's really a victory story.
It is.
It's a real blessing, and it's a story of sobriety, family, getting back in, retangled with my family, finding myself, going from a place of being like a constant liar and not telling the truth to just being in the utmost honesty.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a really good story, and I'm really
Good story. Yeah.
honored to share it today.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, let's go back. Let's go back before you had any problems. I mean, we all have problems all the time, but before you got into the situation you're in now, let's put it that way. Where do you want to start with that part of your story?
Well, I sort of found myself. I think I found myself in a very happy place at a certain point in high school. I went through a really big depression spell, and I found myself very lost in my freshman and sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
I was experimenting with weed, and I was hanging around the wrong people, but I ended up seeing a healer, a therapist, who worked with me, and he just transformed my whole life when I
Mm.
was entering my junior year.
Mm.
What does that say? Oh,
Don't worry.
and I found myself in spirituality. I found myself looking for God again. I was religious. I was raised Catholic,
Mhm.
um, Christian Orthodox, and I sort of like fell off of that. My parents didn't really enforce it on me. My mom got divorced, and she didn't really like stress religion on me.
Mhm.
But I sort of found myself questioning what is my purpose of my life, and like what is the reason that I was put on this planet.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I was looking for a higher power
Yeah.
my junior year of high school, and
Mhm.
I ended up finding all these questions answered at like out of one day where I met up with a friend, and I started going to a yoga studio. And at the yoga studio, I went before school because I always found myself liking to be up at these hours of like 4:30 a.m. to like up at that time.
Mhm.
And I felt it was a time that nobody would expect anything of me.
Oh, okay.
Um, so
Yeah.
I love to be up at that time, and so I started waking up really early and like just spending a bunch of time myself before school,
Yeah.
watching YouTube videos, we're reading a book, journaling,
Mhm.
meditating, and
Is
I
this
decided
part
I
of the
wanted.
yoga experience?
Yeah, well, I
Okay.
started yoga right around this time,
Okay.
and I went to this yoga studio that was right across the street from my high school, Leap Yoga,
Mm.
and I walked into the studio at 5:45 in the morning, and I expected there to be like maybe two or three people with their eyes closed, half asleep, maybe older people. I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
I walked in, and there was an ocean of people, like 40 people in a yoga
Uh,
studio,
uh,
just all chatting it up. There was loud jazz music going on in the background, laughing, all this love, all this positive energy. I was like, wow, what did I just walk into? 5:45 in the morning.
yeah. Yeah.
And I'm a pretty athletic guy. I did cross country, track and field, basketball in high school.
Hmm.
And I played for a team called FYBA for basketball, which is a sort of recreational team, but it was still something.
Yeah. Yeah.
My team was undefeated. And I'm a pretty athletic guy, but this yoga class kicked my butt. It was like I was dripping in sweat because it made
Uh,
the class really heated.
oh yeah. Hot yoga.
Yeah, and it was just it was like it was a almost an outer body experience I was having because of how much I was breathing, because you
Uh-huh.
introduce your breath,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
how much I was working my body and stretching in ways. And he's like, you stretch your side, and he's like, breathe into your side of your body. And I'm like, I never breathe into that part of my body when I'm stretching like this. So it was just an incredible experience. And at the
Mhm.
end, they do something called shavasana, where you lay, and it's called corpse pose, where you lay down and you just sort of just die. You just lay there and you just close your eyes, and they put some quiet music on, and I just felt like so high, to be honest, after this class. I was laying there, and he put this song on that my mom would always sing to me called Imagine by John Lennon.
Yeah, yeah.
Imagine all the people living for today. And I just started crying. And he said, if you have someone next to you, grab their hand.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, I'm not gonna grab anybody's hand. I'm too shy. And two people grabbed my hand.
Uh,
And I was like, I felt such community afterwards. And I went and I talked to some people and I talked to the teacher after the class. And I remember I walked out of the yoga studio and I felt for the first time that I could breathe properly. And I was like, woo. And I went to school that day and I have ADHD.
Mhm.
And it was pretty bad in high school. And I was supposed to be put on Adderall. Everybody, my whole family was pushing me to be on Adderall. And I was about to do it, but after this yoga experience, I focused so much better in school. I was so much calmer, I was so much more at peace. I was so much happier.
Yeah.
And so I started doing yoga every single day before school.
Ah,
And that introduced me into finding this guy, this healer, this therapist.
yeah.
Um, it introduced me into finding meditation.
Mm-hmm.
It introduced me to opening up to spirituality,
Mm-hmm.
prayer. Um, and I found what I was looking for with God.
Yeah.
Um,
Let me just let's go a little deeper with this because um, I think you're tapping into something that a lot of people don't know about yet. I mean, we know we're kind of, as humans, we're like a body, mind, spirit. So we focus on our body and our mind, but we don't really get how to grab a hold of our spirit and use that as a resource to help us, especially during times of suicidal thoughts or other kind of things.
Depression.
So let's talk a little bit more in depth about the spiritual thing. Can you tell me, do you feel connected to a higher power? Is that it?
Yeah. Oh,
Uh-huh.
very much so. It's not always, I have times but it's a lot more often than not.
Yeah.
And I want to say something that I recently came to this conclusion of, that our spirit is brightest in the dark.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
When it's times that we feel least connected to the spirit,
Mm-hmm.
to times that we feel least loved,
Mm-hmm.
where we feel most confused in our life,
Mm-hmm.
or we feel like we've had a bad day, we've made a mistake, something of
Mm-hmm.
that sort.
Mm-hmm.
Our spirit is leading the show. Our spirit is the strongest.
Yeah.
And it takes just maybe like an hour or less of just connecting with yourself
Mm-hmm.
to figure out what is wrong, to figure out what is the trauma that might be running the dark episode that you might be having,
Mm-hmm.
the pain, and then healing it.
Yeah.
And
What I find is because I have that too, and I really rely heavily on my spiritual connection to stay well because I've had a lot of issues with mental health situations with depression and anxiety. I've had to take medication most of my life for it. So what I find, I mean, I just can resonate with what you're saying. What I find is sometimes I I feel like I want to connect spiritually, um, but I just can't feel connected. And I've started to see that as it's not that God's not there anymore. It's that I'm kind of going through a tunnel of some sort. Somehow I've gotten disconnected. And I do just what you do. I find a way to stop and just let, I can't make it happen, but my spirit can reconnect to what I call the great spirit somehow.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I just really want to emphasize, like, what I found is, like, we have to suffer a little bit. We have to go through pain in our lives,
Yeah.
hardship, because that's what makes us grow.
Mm-hmm.
And when we embrace that suffering,
Mm-hmm.
when we embrace our darkness, when we embrace our hardship, it suddenly transmutes into this deep light. And I really do feel that my hardest days are actually to end up being my best days in the long run.
Well, you know,
And
what I find is I mean, I find some of my best growth periods are during pain. It's like God can't get my attention any other way except through what you're calling suffering. So if I'm having a really hard time, um, painful, and I can work my way through that or get through that because of a spiritual connection, then I'm wiser and stronger, just like you're saying.
right. And this life sort of has pain. Buddha said that life is suffering.
Yeah.
This life has pain, part of it. It's a part of it. And I don't think any of us really chose to be in this MHRC facility. I don't think any of us chose to be in jail. We didn't grow up as kids and say, I want to go to jail when I'm older, you know?
Yeah.
We didn't grow up as kids and say, I want to be in a locked facility and
Yeah.
not, you know, and not be able to leave whenever I want.
Mm-hmm.
That was something that it was painful to experience.
Yeah.
It was painful to be in these experiences.
Mhm.
And through that pain, we grew, like
Yeah.
you said.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like we're forced to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of humbles us. Like
Oh,
we
absolutely.
and it's really a blessing, you know. I really appreciate the darkness and learn to embrace it. And
Mm-hmm.
suddenly my suicidal days, my depression days, my heartbreak days, um they become my most strongest healing days.
Mm-hmm.
The days where I uncovered most about myself, where I
Yeah.
learned most about
Yeah.
myself, where I learned
Yeah.
where I found out who really is there for me,
Yeah.
who is my support.
Yeah. I
I
have the
recently
same experience. Yeah.
I went through a breakup and I was really heartbroken for like 2 weeks. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. And I had so much support through that, all from the staff members here, from my family, from my therapist. I have a therapist and that guy is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I found out who is my real support, who is really there for me in my darkest times.
Yeah.
And that made me feel a sense of community and family
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that I didn't have that before my darkness.
Mm-hmm.
So my darkness actually made it so that I was feeling a lot more loved.
Yes. Yes. So do you have any experience with the 12 steps?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm actually going to go to an AA meeting today.
Oh, good. That's really helped me. 12 steps meetings have helped me a lot. I think it's
Yeah.
such a good formula. Like those 12, if you just follow those 12 steps, you can't help but grow. You know, just
I mean, it has thousands of results, people having results, you know, like
yeah.
thousands of people that are getting clean and sober and
Mhm.
transforming their life. And really, I surround myself around all clean and sober people nowadays.
That's a
I don't
good
surround
idea.
myself around anybody that's doing drugs.
Yeah.
And they're all knowing that this is what's up. This is
Mhm.
part of my friends. This is the shit.
Yeah.
This is this is where it's at. Sobriety, being clean and sober,
Mhm.
um, that is where um God is. You know, that's where healing comes. Because we don't heal because we're constantly doing drugs and to escape our pain. We feel
Yeah.
depression, feel suicidal. We
Mhm.
do you smoke a drug.
Yeah.
Well then
It stops
you
your
take
growth.
you take that away
Hmm.
and you feel numb for some time.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
take that away, and then what do you have? You have to go through it. And it's
Yes.
almost like a trip. It's like a journey
Yeah.
that you have to go through. And it's like it's an incredible journey because you learn yourself through it.
Yes.
And at the end of it, there's a light at the end of the tunnel where you're rewarded and you grow as a person and you're happier and you can live with more love in your heart.
Let me ask you this. Speaking of addictions, because addictions create so many blind spots, because we can't see if we're in an addiction. We're so consumed by an addiction that we can't see our way through it. And like you say, it numbs everything, so you don't have to work through. What blind spots did you uncover?
Uncover?
When you stopped drinking or drugging or whatever, did you find that some insights came to you that you didn't have when you were in the addiction?
Oh, yeah. Well, I went to jail. So I was forced to be clean and sober. And I found that every high that I've had, excuse me, every high that I've had, it was possible to attain sober.
Yes.
That state of mind,
Yeah.
I attained that in jail while I was sober through meditation,
Yeah.
through talking with God, through really how I would get through time was I would tell stories of my past to myself. And it was just this really awesome thing that I started doing to kill hours of time in jail, where I would just tell myself a story from my past, where I was with my friends, or I went skateboarding, or I went snowboarding, or I went on this hike. And this time, it was a crazy time. I went to a party, and it was all my craziest memories. I talked about them, and what I found was I was in a place where I was almost, I don't know if the word I want to use is numb, but I was like sedated from the pain of the world.
Yeah. I would
That
call that remembering who you are.
right, yeah, fine, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't have that pain anymore that I was holding in my heart. Um, through it took me going through the darkness, but after I went through that darkness, it left, and that's the point, that if you can be clean and sober and go through that darkness, it will go away and you will feel better after.
Yes.
And you'll feel closer to your family too, because your family doesn't want you doing drugs.
No. Well, let's back up a little bit and just piece the story together.
Yeah.
So you were in high school. First couple of years, you were had a lot of sad times. Let's just call them sad times.
Yeah.
And probably scary times. Sadness and scary go together often. And
Yeah,
then you
definitely.
found this yoga class in your junior year that it sounds like it was almost you had kind of an experience with God, I would say.
Yeah, I did.
You just accidentally fell into a space. I'm sure it wasn't an accident, but you didn't plan it, where you had, let's call it a divine intervention, where a higher power showed you a different way to be happy. And you carried that with you through the rest of high school. And then you got out of high school and you got into that zone, that's really vulnerable zone between high school and adulthood. And that's where the situations started to come up that landed you in jail and so forth.
Yeah.
Let's go back to, let's talk a little bit about after graduation from high school and see what happens there.
Well, actually, I graduated a year early. I graduated my junior year because I tested out. Because I stopped vibing with the cliques of high school. I stopped liking the status quo of what was right, what was cool. I didn't want to wear the cool clothes anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't want to.
You outgrew high school.
Huh?
You outgrew it.
I outgrew high school. I found myself hanging out with, on my older time, I was hanging out with all the people from the yoga studio
Yeah. Yeah.
and a spiritual community, and older people, in their 20s and in their 30s. I was only 17. 16 actually. And I graduated a year early, and I had a lot of time for myself I started getting into work,
Mm-hmm.
and I felt everything was working out for me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I got into meditation a lot. I started seeing this healer regularly.
Mm-hmm.
I was really in bliss, you know, and then
Yeah.
that's when I went to the farm.
Okay. Now, tell us about the farm. How did you find the farm?
Well, this healer, this therapist, funny enough, he said the best work to probably do, the most grounding work, and you don't have to be in the craziness of this world. It's a really consistent job, is farm work.
Ah, yeah.
So why don't you try out farming? And I looked up a farm, and he used to get these veggie boxes, fruit and veggie boxes from this one farm called Mama Earth Farm.
Mm-hmm.
And I called that farm, and he's like, "Hey, sorry, man. If you don't have any farm experience, I don't want to work with you." I said, "Okay, that sounds good." And I hung up the phone. It was one of those things where I hung up the phone, and I was like, "There's still something here at this farm for me, you know.
Oh,
I can't give it up yet. You know, there's
yeah.
still
Yeah.
I can't let this go, you know." And I called him back like an hour later, and I was like, "Hey, man." He's like, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm like, "Hey, man, I'm really like a spiritual guy, and I'm really into like living a peaceful life, a beautiful life."
Mhm.
Um, and he's like, he and I had this amazing conversation about spirituality, about Buddhism, philosophy, spirituality, farming, what it does for him, for like
Mhm.
an hour. And he's like, "You know what? You could check out the farm at least."
Yeah.
So I went with my parents, and my dad is a really awesome guy. He's my stepdad. He came into my life when I was 7.
Ah,
Um, so he just an incredible guy, and when he puts his mind to something, he makes it happen.
uh-huh.
And he really wanted me to live on this farm.
Uh-huh.
Um, Not only would it like sort of get me out of the house on my own, but it would be something that would be productive. Like we thought that would be I'd learn a lot of trades
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
farm.
Yeah.
And they do a lot of trades. They do carpentry, irrigation work,
Yeah.
um, farming, of course, tractor work, all kinds of stuff. And I went and visited the farm, and literally my dad just was like, "We will make this happen. We'll compensate you financially. We'll do whatever it takes. I want him to learn everything it takes to learn farming."
Huh. Mm.
And he ended up accepting it, and I moved onto the farm the next day.
Huh.
We
Huh.
packed my stuff from the house, and I moved onto the farm.
Huh. Huh.
And I was out in the middle of nature.
Yeah.
It was probably the most epic life transformation that I've ever had.
How long were you there?
I lived on the farm for I think it was like I've been on and off that farm, so they became family to me.
Uh-huh.
And I've lived on in my entire life. I've lived on that farm for 2 years.
Okay.
But it was about 6, 7 months that I stayed on it the first time,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I learned a lot. I spent a lot of time in nature. I cooked for myself every day. I worked my butt off, and I actually worked for money on the farm, and it was all really good.
Mm-hmm. Well, then something happened that you left there the last time you left there. You got in an argument or something?
Yeah, I got into an argument with him. I guess I was just hoping for a little bit more respect from him, because he was really stressed out, and I
Mm-hmm.
was putting my whole heart into the farm, and he didn't really want to give me the respect. So yeah, put it this way, I left the farm the next one day, and one day, um and yeah, I didn't want to go back until some stuff happened.
Yeah. So then you got off the farm. Now you're just kind of floating around.
Yeah, I went back to my parents' house, and that was really difficult because my parents um were um they were going back to their old patterns of like babying me a little bit.
Yeah.
and I was like, I liked my independence.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up getting a house for rent. My parents let me stay in a house for rent. They paid for my rent, like really good deal, like $750 a month.
Ah, ah.
For a room, a small little dinky room in Sacramento.
Mm-hmm.
And because I didn't want to live with them anymore. I wanted to have my independence, and they also liked living without me. They liked the independence of their own freedom,
Mm-hmm.
and living their life together, and seeing me every weekend or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I started working a job at a restaurant, and I was doing pretty good. I was actually doing pretty successful, you know. But I got back into smoking weed, and I that sort of led from one thing to another. And I quit the job, and I was really suicidal one day. And I just went out, and one day I was like, you know what? F it. I'm suicidal already. I don't wanna live. I might as well try something a little harder. And
Mm-hmm.
it was offered to me by a homeless person.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect to do it. I asked this homeless person if he had any weed, and he offered me meth.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, I'm already suicidal. I might as well try it.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it, and I got that feeling that I was looking for a long time, actually, that spiritual feeling that I was sort of chasing when I was doing the yoga and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I one thing led to another, and I started doing it regularly. And my mom was realizing something was going on with me, and my parents were getting pretty disappointed in me. And but they would still see me, and
Mm-hmm.
I'd be on meth, you know. I
Mm-hmm.
would and I would it would be like, where's our son, you know?
Well, yeah, if you've got a little ADHD going on and you add meth to it,
Yeah.
it's like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, I usually kept my cool pretty good.
Mm.
But I still was it really was not mentally healthy thing to
Mm-hmm.
be doing for myself.
So
So
then
yeah.
the next thing that happened is you got put in jail.
Yeah, my parents yeah. My parents got a restraining order on me, and
Mm-hmm.
because they found out I was doing meth. My dad actually caught me doing meth.
Mm-hmm.
And I was at rock bottom. I was actually doing it with a homeless guy near the side of the road,
Mm-hmm.
and he saw me,
Uh,
and that broke his heart into millions of pieces, and he got a
yeah.
restraining order on me. And my parents, you know, I went to jail
Mm-hmm.
from that restraining order
Mm-hmm.
because I violated it,
Yeah.
and I saw them. And that was jail. We want to talk about jail now?
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't need the nitty gritty, but something happened in jail for you. You saw the
Yeah,
light
that's where this whole thing
light came
started.
back.
Like I came back to myself.
Mm-hmm.
It was a finding Christ moment where I was just so negative. I was complaining constantly in jail. I just remembered that was everything was complaining. I was like, I don't get to go out anymore. I don't get to eat my own food anymore. I'm starving. I don't
Mm-hmm.
get to do drugs anymore. This sucks. I can't wait to get out of here, but I don't know when I'm gonna get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any more support from my family. Everything's just sucked.
Yeah.
And I was just complaining and saying everything was terrible, everything was terrible. Well, that's no way to live.
No, even in jail.
Constantly,
Yeah.
constantly complaining and being a negative Nancy about life is
Yeah.
a really miserable way to live life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people fall into that trap, you know, just take life for granted,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that's really what it is. It's taking life for granted.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't grateful for anything. I just was just so negative in jail. I found myself in probably my lowest place. And in my lowest place, I had this one day where I just couldn't take it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It was just too much pain to bear. And I just laid on the ground, and I just started crying. And I was weeping in tears. And I was like, what do I do? I can't take this anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. And jail is a beautiful thing because it forces you to be with yourself and all that pain that you've been running away from. I was sober. I was detoxing all the drugs. And so I had to feel that pain.
Yeah, yeah,
And how I coped with it for some time was complaining and being negative.
yeah.
But I couldn't live like that much longer. So I laid on the floor, I started weeping, and then suddenly I realized God started talking to me, and God was saying, "You're ready. You have you're it's time for you."
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly I realized how blessed I was that the universe was protecting me from myself because I was on a death sentence
Mm-hmm.
while I was doing these drugs, while I could have been any day laced with fentanyl. And
Mm-hmm.
I was having fun, but it was pushing me so far away from where I wanted to be in my life.
Right, right, yeah.
And I came to this moment where I was like, well, this is my opportunity to come back to myself.
Mm-hmm.
This sobriety, this
Mm-hmm.
yoga, this place that I started from, that
Mm-hmm.
I was is this over?
Are you having some technical issues there?
Yeah, she just fixed it.
Okay, I can hear you
Um,
pretty well.
all right, sounds good.
But let's go back to you're laying on the ground crying,
Mm-hmm.
and you realize that you've been kind of caught up in a situation of complaining and being negative. Then what changed at that moment? How did this? Can you? That might be hard to come up with
I
words for.
had like an ego death. It was too much pain. I had like I wanted to kill myself. That was like I have been suicidal in my life and
Mhm.
I wanted to die. And so I sort of just laid there and I died. Like I just had like this ego death. And it was a holy experience where I felt God's angels.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
felt the presence of something so strong watching over me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I sort of fell asleep actually. And I woke up and everything was different after I woke up.
Yeah,
Every it was like out of the darkness came the light.
yeah, yeah.
And I suddenly started feeling so like I felt like I was in a different body too. It was a healing experience. This is what happens when you heal. You feel like you're a different person and
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to try anymore. It's just like naturally you're effortlessly in a state of abundance and
Yeah,
peace and
yeah,
happiness
yeah.
because you went through all the darkness and all that bad stuff and it 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 was uncovered.
Mm-hmm.
And so I woke up and I was like, well, I have a warm bed. I have like 3 meals a day.
You moved
I could
into
talk to my
gratitude.
parents.
Yeah.
Huh?
You moved into gratitude.
I fell into gratitude.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I started realizing like it's not so bad. You
Yeah.
know, I all these people that are in my life, they're still in my life.
Mm-hmm.
They still love me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I still have opportunities. It's not my whole life, you know.
Right.
I can and I could take this time to grow and that's where I started talking to God more and like meditating more and I found a deep happiness in jail actually
Mm-hmm.
at a certain point because I healed. And
Yeah.
after we heal, we find happiness in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so there's hope for anybody that's suffering and going through a lot of depression, especially in these facilities,
Mm-hmm.
that this is a place to heal. This
Yeah.
is a place to go through all of our trauma,
Yeah.
to transform.
Mm-hmm.
And after we do that, we can find happiness in our life
Mm-hmm.
for real.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take a drug. It doesn't take any person to tell you that you have to do you live your life a certain way. It takes you to be truly good with yourself.
Yes. So well, you got out of jail then, and did you
Yeah.
go right into Crestwood from there?
I went to Schmick.
Okay, so that's a Sacramento mental health facility. Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Okay, that's like a crisis clinic of some sort.
Yeah, it's a higher level of care than Crestwood.
Yeah, I think it's called a PUF, a psychiatric health facility.
It's like a puff, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you were there, and then from there you went to Crestwood?
Yeah. And Crestwood was some of the biggest blessing of my life. I saw all these people walking around in the hallways. They're all clean and sober. They're all having good energy, all kind people.
Yeah.
And they all had this like they were all different. None of them were not a single person was like was your average person.
Huh.
They were all different people, and I felt I was a very different outcast person, so I felt right at home.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
made a lot of friends, and
Mhm.
this facility was better. They had let you have a TV, they let you have a
Uh-huh.
radio,
Yeah.
they let you go on passes, and I ended up really finding happiness.
You know what I'm hearing too is you feel respected there.
Oh yeah, and actually my one of my favorite staff members, he just walked in the room on across from us. His name is Justin. Um, he he's always there for me. When
Huh.
during my breakup, he was my right by my side,
Huh.
and
Huh.
all kinds of staff members had just been there supporting me.
Yeah.
And so I will never forget these people when I get out of here.
Huh.
I will never forget these people and what they've done for me. And every day I'm still here. So I'm gonna be here for some more time.
So let's
Well,
talk about what's next for you because um, you're on conservatorship right now,
yeah,
but you're going to contest that in August.
yep,
Yeah, that's good. And then
yeah. Might get out of here. I might go
we're,
back to the farm.
yeah, that's our hope, isn't it? That you can,
Yeah,
because if you get off of conservatorship, you can leave there voluntarily. You
yep.
can request one, yeah, and go back. Yeah. Well, that sounds like a great plan. I just want to wish you the best with your conservatorship situation. And
Thank you so much.
I did talk with your conservator, as you know, because we couldn't really do an interview without their um, permission and their blessing, let's say. And I just felt like they have a lot of respect for you too, and just see the best in you. So
I did a lot of healing work in my life, and I've worked on myself a lot to the point where I can be someone that can be respected.
yeah, yeah,
And I respect myself, you know,
yeah, yeah.
and I love myself.
That's good. And how old are you now?
I'm 23.
23. So all of this happened between the age of like 17 and 23.
Yep.
You lived several lifetimes in those just few years.
Oh, I've lived a lot of life in those few years. Yep.
You had a crash course in um, living
Yep.
and and
And I
and
didn't know, I don't know if I brought up the fact that I was homeless for some time.
oh, that's right. We didn't talk about that.
Yeah, I was homeless for some time, and
Mhm.
that's where it led downhill, and that's where right around the time I went to jail.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So it was a lot of life that I lived.
yeah.
I went to India too. I spent some time. I went to India. I went and studied the spirituality.
Huh,
I when I stayed at a spiritual school in India that I really cared for,
huh.
but I had an appendicitis when I was there.
How old were you when this happened?
That was when I was 19.
Okay, so you were out of high school by then.
Yeah,
Is that when you were on the farm? You went from the
it was
farm?
right after the farm. Actually,
Okay.
so after I left, I got a job
Uh-huh.
at a restaurant, and I saved money, and I got help from my sister and my uncle, and they helped me get to India.
Huh. How long were
And
you there?
I was there for 21 days.
Huh. Well, that
It
must
was
have been,
definitely it was definitely that I grew a lot there because of how different the culture was.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was a lot of fun.
Hmm.
My parents don't look at it that way. They're like, "You almost died. How could you say you had the best time of your life?" But I was like, "No, it was the best time of my life. I hope to go back there soon."
Yeah, I hope you can get back there.
Yeah, India is my home.
Um, so when you get out, and let's just say you do get off a conservatorship and you get back to the farm, do you have practices or things you can do to maintain your spiritual connection? Because that
Yeah,
seems like
definitely.
something, yeah, okay, good.
Well, one thing is talking to my therapist regularly.
Mm-hmm,
My therapist is all about my sobriety journey. Is all
mm-hmm,
about um my clean and sober living, my all the things I'm doing that are good for myself. He's all about that.
mm-hmm,
So my therapist. Another thing is regular talks to my parents, being
mm-hmm,
involved with my parents because my parents are also my number one fans. So having
mm-hmm.
a strong support group, family, therapist, um, music, meditation, yoga.
Mhm.
I'm gonna be practicing all of them, getting a stable job.
You know what I could see for you is I would love to see you find a way to give back in a real purposeful, meaningful way, like becoming a peer support specialist or something. So you find a job where you can help people who are in the same situation you've been in, and you can really be helpful because you've been there. I don't know. We should maybe talk about that at some point, about how you might be able to find a job like that.
Yeah, I would love to do something like that. And
Yeah.
I was just talking to my friend Justin. He said that you should come back here and start working here after 6 months.
Well, yeah, that's not a bad, that's a good idea, because Crestwood does hire peer support specialists. Um, they just need to be trained, so we'd have to get you in a training of some sort.
Yeah, sky's the limit. Whatever God has planned for me. I like that song "Oceans" by Hillsong. Have you heard that song "Oceans"?
Well, tell me, and maybe I'll remember
It
it.
goes, Spirit, lead me where my trust is without borders. Let me walk upon the waters wherever you would call me.
I like it. Yeah, I'm going to look it up when we hang up.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song. I really hope you enjoy it.
Well, I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you so much for your time and sharing your wisdom with us. And I just wish you the best on your life journey. So far, it's been amazing, I would say.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of stuff out of the way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm excited for the next part of it.
yeah,
It's gonna be bliss. And that one of my teachers says life is bliss.
uh,
Bliss is life.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Vaughn. I really appreciate your time. Okay,
Thank
so
you.
we'll end there.
All right.
That was probably about an hour, maybe 45 minutes. So we'll go through it. We'll take out anything that's a little blip here and there. I didn't hear very many blips. There were a couple little blips, not from you, just little things.
I said the SHIT word one time.
That's okay. We don't care about that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all right. We can't do the F word right now, but
Oh no, not the F word.
we can do the S words.
All right. Hey,
Yeah.
so what's your name?
Lori,
Oh,
Lori,
hi, Lori.
Lori
Vaughn.
Ashcraft.
Huh?
Ashcraft. Lori Ash.
Ashcraft.
Yeah,
Lori Ashcraft.
yeah.
It was really a delight meeting you.
You too. You too.
Yeah.
So we'll probably post this uh in 2 or 3 weeks. So I'll let you know so you can see it. And I'm gonna see if you don't mind, I'm gonna ask Adrian if he can show it to at least the staff there and maybe some of the people. You might want to invite people. You might have like a film evening and invite people to come and watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. I put my heart into this one.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. Well, thanks again and
Thank you, Lori.
have a good evening, and I hope we meet again.
Yeah, I hope so too. I'll have
Okay.
Miley reach out to you for me.
Okay. All right. Very good. Take
All right.
care.
Much love.
Much love to you. Bye-bye. So there you have it. I hope you were able to hear this story through the lens of a spiritual emergence. I'm not denying that there aren't things that could be treated in Vaughn's story. Not denying that at all. But if we lock into a whole framework of diagnosing, we miss the bigger picture, the real human being picture of what's happening here. So I hope you were able to do that. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. It was just really, for me, a very moving experience to interview Vaughn. So, okay, wishing you all well. See you next time. Sending you lots of love. Take care. Bye-bye.